And so we're going live.
They get it.
Let me go to our page. Okay, we are live. Give us 1 second. Okay, it is 7 o'clock, and so we will begin. Good evening, everyone. My name is LeBaron Evans, and I am the Youth Director of Friendship Missionary Baptist Church. We're located. It is 7 o'clock here, and so we begin. All right, we are located here in Mobile, Alabama, and our pastor is Dr. Corey D. Brown. Before I go any further, let me encourage you to host a watch party on tonight that you like, share, comment, and don't forget to like our Facebook, our main Facebook church page, as well as our swag page. The links can be found. It will be pinned to this feed. This event is part of our swag revival and youth emphasis month. The questions you will hear on tonight comes from our youth and church family. At this time, it is an honor and privilege to introduce our guest moderator for the evening, Toy Thornton. Toy Thornton was born and raised in the Big Easy, New Orleans, Louisiana. He received his undergraduate degree from Dillard University in Mass Communication with a concentration in broadcast journalism in 2014. Furthering his educational goals, Toy graduated from Full Sail University in Winter Park, Florida, with a Master's of Arts in New Media Journalism in 2016. Toy prides himself on the way he dresses, sporting blazers and suits of all kinds and always looking to update his style. One of his trademarks is the bow tie. While he may not always have one on, he'll always have one handy. When Toy isn't at work, you can find him at church, hanging out with friends, or at home enjoying dessert and watching shows on Netflix. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to turn this session over to our moderator for the evening from Fox 10 News, Mr. Toy Thornton.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. I was listening to that bio. I forgot that I wrote that on Fox 10's website. But anyway, it's a pleasure, honor, and a privilege to be here, to be able to moderate and to sit amongst a group of such great men. And so, again, I thank you for this honor. So we're going to get right into it. Let's start by having everyone introduce themselves here. Going to start with
Okay, we cut off for a minute.
Okay, did we lose him?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, until he comes back, we will start our introductions. Okay, he's coming back in. All right, I'll give him a second to reconnect.
Right. Yeah,
All right, Corey, are you there?
Yeah, my apologies. Got knocked off.
All right, that's
yeah.
technology for you. Go ahead and continue.
All right. Anyway, we're going to start. We're going to have everyone introduce themselves. Let's start with Judge Finley. Then we'll go to the Clopton, and then the Councilman Richardson, and then Alvin Giroux, and then Gary Cooper.
Good evening. I'm Carlos Finley. I'm a local attorney here in the city of Mobile, and I also serve as a municipal court judge. My law practice is in the civil plaintiffs area, and the judgeship that I serve is a criminal court for the city of Mobile. I just want to say what an honor it is to be on such a distinguished panel and to be sitting here with Mobile history, because if you understand Major General J. Gary Cooper and City Councilman Fred Richardson, then you know that they are history just by being in the room. So I'm looking forward to this evening. I'm honored by the invitation, and I am really, really excited about what we're about to get into.
Good evening, I'm Robert Clopton. I'm a member of Friendship Missionary Baptist Church, and I'd like to give a shout out to our pastor, Reverend Corey Brown, and his lovely wife. And I am very, very excited to be here tonight. I'm glad to be a member of Friendship. I'm glad that our youth department is definitely involved in such an endeavor. I am the president of the local NAACP Mobile County branch, and we're on a mission. The mission that we started in 1909, that is to ensure the political, educational, social, and economic equality of rights for all people. They race-based discrimination. Thank you, and it is an honor to be in such great company.
Councilman Richardson.
Okay, I am Fred Richardson. I was born and raised in rural Connecticut County, a little community called Nemps. I've been in Mobile since 1958. I was in the civil rights struggle. I was in the eye of the storm of the civil rights struggle to be free, headed up by the neighborhood organized workers, Noble C. Beasley, president, James Finley, the vice president. And I retired. I graduated from University of South Alabama. I'm a retired manager of the U.S. Postal Service, and I've been on the Mobile City Council since 1997. I served 12 years as vice president of the Mobile City Council. I am happy to be here, to be with this distinguished group to discuss these important topics. I'm looking forward to joining you all.
Major General Cooper.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be here. Many people ask me, why don't I root for Alabama and Auburn? And I said, hell, they wouldn't let me in. So I went to a little school called the University of Notre Dame, and I graduated 63 years ago. And we've seen great changes in our state. John LaFleur and I were the first Blacks elected to the Alabama legislature. And working with John LaFleur was a great pleasure. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm honored. And anything I can do to help, just give me a call. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Detective Zandra Thornton. She's the only female we have with us right now, so we're gonna give her some real respect. let's have her introduce herself, and then Alvin, you can follow.
Good evening. I'm very excited to be here. Right now, I'm employed with the Mobile County Sheriff's Department. I work in the domestic violence crime unit, so I've just newly been assigned there. But prior to me coming to the Mobile County Sheriff's Department, I worked 23 years with the Mobile Police Department. I started in 1992 as a cadet, and when I left in 2015, I was a sergeant. So I have been in the community for years, love working with people, making a difference. So I'm excited to be here among this awesome panel. So great questions. So I'm looking forward to, the dialogue tonight.
Alvin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alvin Giroux Jr. Thank you all for having me. I'm a recent graduate out of Madison Blunt High School, and I'll be furthering my education at the Alabama State University, where I major in broadcast journalism. You may also know me from a show I host called The Droll Effect Live, where I basically interview small businesses, athletes, and many more. So thank you all for having me, and I just can't wait.
All right. Okay. Alvin's having a few technical difficulties there, it looks like. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Again, I did forget to mention.
To talk about and discuss these problems.
Okay. I did forget to mention Pastor Brown, so I want to acknowledge the pastor of Friendship Missionary Baptist Church, and thank you for this opportunity here. All right, so let's get started with the conversation. So part of the reason we're having this conversation tonight is to continue to educate our young people on race and politics, political issues that affect them every day. Of course, we know what's been happening in our country over the past few months, obviously over the past 2 years, rather, the country has really been on pins and needles with these topics. And over the past few months, things have gotten more serious when it comes to these topics and the discussion of them since the death of George Floyd. So just last year, the Friendship SWAG Youth Department hosted a youth revival entitled When They See Us. This year, their title is Help Me Breathe. So we're going to start with our first question, and this is open for discussion, so anybody can answer this. And then following this, we'll go into some other questions specifically for certain people. So let's start with this. How do you believe we've gotten to this point where we continue to have cases of police killings of Black men and women and other instances of racism in America?
I don't mind starting off, but I'll give you all a chance.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Okay, thank you very much. I have took a hard look into that. My study in school was history and political science. So I pursued history. I've written history. I've published history. So in examining this, I had to figure out what happened to us. 1619, we came over on the ship as slaves, and we got evicted from the human race from 1619 to 1865. 1865, slavery ended, but everything else pretty much remained the same except slavery. But it was in 1857 that the Dred Scott decision came up before the Supreme Court, and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court issued that decision, Roger B. Taney, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Dred was a slave who had moved to Illinois as a free man, and his master's wife moved him back to St. Louis. That contended she couldn't make him a slave. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court issued that decision, and that said that he went on to say that the Negroes for more than a century has been considered beings of an inferior order, altogether unfit to associate with the white race, either in business or political relations, and so far inferior that they must be kept in slavery for their own good. So we were considered to be a sub-race, not a race equal to the human race, but we were human-like, but we had limited abilities. We were born innately inferior, where we couldn't read, right? Couldn't do the things that a person whose skin was white was able to do. So they put us in this, and we have been ever since battling this. But let me add something else to that. If you go back to the Bible in Genesis 1:26, God said, "Let us make man in our own image and after our own likeness." After our own likeness means let them do the things we can do. That all humans can stand upright, they can walk, talk, laugh, cry, think, plan, reason. That all humans can do that. If you can't do that, you're not in the human race. The color of a person's skin cannot put them in the human race. If that was true, dogs our color would be in the race also. Cows and hogs our color would be in the race. A white cow would be in the white race. No. What put us in the race is our functions, what we can do. So we can no longer sit out about and let someone classify us as being a member of some black race or whatever race you want to name it. We are members of the human race. So if you go back and apply science to this, you will find that Spencer Wells, who is a geneticist from Harvard University, one of the leading geneticists in the world, wrote this book, The Journey of Man, and he was able to take human DNA and trace all of us back to our original ancestors in East Africa. I don't care if you're black, white, I don't care what continent you're in, you can be traced back to East Africa. We have an original ancestor, all of us, who was Adam and Eve. And if you go to the second chapter of Genesis, you will see that a river left the Garden of Eden, went to Ethiopia, meaning East Africa. Adam and Eve was East Africans. We're all members of the same race, the human race.
All right. Thank you. Councilman, anyone else? Okay, Detective.
What I was going to say, just being involved and seeing a lot of things over my almost 30 years in law enforcement, communities, we become reactive. We react when situations happen, but we're not proactive. There is proaction that happens, but it's few far among those that are actually out there being proactive. So you can prevent different things like, you know, the cases what we have with police and the you know, different issues that come up in law enforcement, or with this particular issue throughout the country in law enforcement. When something happens, we react to it, and then everybody goes dormant. The consistency is what I've seen, because I've seen things happen, but when we try to, you know, go out and say, okay, let's do this, the momentum dies down. And when the momentum dies down, they're looking, or whoever, okay, they've calmed down, we're emotional. And once we get over our emotions, we go back to standard quo. But when we're like, okay, let's do this, let's put this initiative together, let's, you know, implement this, it falls by the wayside because the lack of involvement. So I think that it's gotten to this point because we react, but we're not necessarily proactive. We're proactive after the time, but when it's time to be, because proaction is all the time. You never stop. I worked with the Police Explorers when I was with the police department. It was a youth program. There were some people that worked with me that didn't see the benefit in it, but what I did, because now a lot of the young people that I work with that lived in public housing or adults, you know, they've gone on, they graduated, they came out of public housing. We exposed them to different things, but we were proactive in that. So you don't see a lot of them engaging. Some of them are on police departments now. They're actively in police because, you know, we expose them to that. But that was a proactive mark. So when that proaction, you know, when they say, oh, we don't need it, it's not doing any good, then, you know, what is it left to do? That's just a small fraction of, you know, community action groups and other things that I've been involved with. From education, I did it all. So I've been at the meetings, I've been on the panels, and we react, but we're not proactive. And we react. And I think that's why we gotten to where we are now. And we still continue to be here, because it'll die down to the next situation if we don't continue the momentum and being consistent.
Amen.
If I could chime in, and I'd certainly echo what Councilman Richardson stated, that there is but one race of people. The only reason we look different is because for centuries, our ancestors have lived in different environments. It takes more DNA to determine your eye color than your skin color. And that's from Dr. Luca Cavelli, an Italian geneticist who also did human genome research. When we talk about the position that we are in today, when we talk about killings of unarmed Black women and men of today, which is, I think, the crux of the question, this isn't new, and this isn't something that's all of a sudden happened a lot. What it is that technology has entered into the picture. And so we are able to record these instances because everyone has a television station in their pocket, in their phone. So it's not new, it's not more, it's just documented more so because everyone has the ability to record. Now, when we talk about police and African Americans and that relationship, if we go back to when slavery was abolished, many slaves would leave the South and head west because that was the new frontier. Well, there were bounty hunters and police persons who were sent after slaves to bring them back to be sharecroppers because the South was crippled without the slave labor. And so if you listen to artists like Lead Belly and the Midnight Special, he talks about how there were work camps that police went out and rounded up African Americans to feed these work camps. And then if you visit the Equal Justice Initiative up in Montgomery, you'll see that there is an entire timeline of these atrocities that have been visited upon African Americans throughout the history of this country. So this isn't new, but now what we are seeing is technology has entered into the picture and these matters are being recorded. So it may be that there is, let's say, a dip in activity regarding how we address these issues, but there won't be long until there's another, and there will continue to be others until we are proactive, as Sheriff points out. The thing that's different, however, from the time that City Councilman Richardson was a civil rights organizer and Major General Cooper was a part of changing the military in our country. These new protests are not just Black people, and they're not just majority Black people. There are people all over this planet who are talking about Black Lives Matter. When I turned on the television, I saw people in China, in France, in Germany, in London, England, protesting because of the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and these folks. See, when Councilman Richardson boycotted here in Mobile, you know, there were 100 people or 150 people arrested. 40 of those people were white. They were nuns and priests, but 110 were African American. Nowadays, we've got the most diverse group of protesters that this planet has ever seen. This isn't going away. We must address these things, and we're going to address them now.
All right, thank you guys. A good introduction, and I'm going to ask that we limit our answers to 1 to 2 minutes so that we can keep moving up a lot of questions here.
Give us a sign, please. If somebody can hold
I
up
want to
a
stop. All right.
we got
I'm
a minute and a half.
These are tough issues.
Help a brother out, because I get on the roll, man. And, you know.
And each question could give us a lot of the discussion, but we got a lot of questions. So let's keep it moving. All right. So this next question is for Alvin and Detective Thornton. We want you guys to chime in on this question. So we know what sort of sparked all of this civil unrest in our country over the past few months was the death of George Floyd. The country stood still. They sent shockwaves across the country. seeing that video of him with police officers, under police officers, with one of them having their knee to his neck, him crying so desperately for help and not receiving help. Of course, George Floyd, unfortunately, succumbed to his injuries. What do we say when seeing that? Alvin, as a young Black man, how did that make you feel? And Detective Thornton, as a police officer, a Black police officer, how did that make you feel, Alvin?
Excuse me. I was having technical difficulties before you.
Okay, Alvin, I think we can't quite understand what you said, so we're gonna move.
Yeah,
to the.
I'm having technical difficulties.
Yeah, you're breaking up. Okay, we're gonna move to Detective Thornton while you kind of figure that out.
Difficulties. Can you repeat?
Yeah,
Hello?
you're still breaking up on our end. We're gonna move to Detective Thornton. I think Brother Evans can speak with you, but Detective Thornton, as a Black woman, also a police officer, what did you feel when seeing that video?
I remember my son and I were coming back from Pensacola, and he was watching it. I think around the time what happened, or the time it was shared, and he looked over at me and he said, "Mama," he said, "Look at this." He said, "I said, is that real?" So I'm watching it, and I was listening to Mr. Floyd and him begging and pleading and people saying, "Get up." And I said, "Is that an old video?" Because I still couldn't believe what I was seeing. And as my son and I continued to watch it coming across the Bayway, I knew, when, he died, because I mean, you see it a lot, so I knew there were certain things, and I was like, that can't be real. And I said, go pull it up and make sure that this is something because I just didn't want to believe it. So when he came back, he said, "Mama, he died," because at the time I'm looking at, I'm like, everything that I saw was wrong. So I'm mad because we already have enough going on. And now you got this, and I'm seeing somebody that was it was deliberate. So I'm furious. And with that, I'll come back and I'm like, how could they just pick, it's like, this is a crime scene. Like, where do we do that at? So, because all the work that you do, all the good things that you do, that particular incident just overshadow all the work, or the works of us that are out here that are, doing our due diligence in our community, whether it's white, Black, whoever. I protect and serve all. I worked in a rural area now for 3 years, coming from inner city and rural areas. So as a Black female, for the things that I know that I've had to go through in law enforcement, being Black, being female, one, to see that it could have been my son, because I'm looking at my son. So I'm upset because now I know this is going to have some real, and it did. So, I said, we got to do better. So, and then you have to hear other people and their input. And then, it's like, it's not hard to explain, but I have to be mindful of what I say. But that particular, I was angry. I was angry, as not just as a Black mother, as someone that's in law enforcement. There was no justification.
Okay, that was your
I guess
law.
the bailment. Yeah, I guess the bailment stopped.
Okay, all right, Alvin. I think you missed a question. He's back now. Looks like he's a little bit more smooth now. So the question was, seeing as a young Black man, seeing the George Floyd video of George Floyd being arrested. I mean, what was on that video, but seeing that video as a young Black man, how did that make you feel?
It made me feel like, growing up as a African American young man, and I was always in PWIs, predominantly white, well, not PWIs, I wasn't in college, but predominantly white schools. And, you always felt like you had to put your best foot forward and show that you're not the stereotypes that are displayed about you in society. Just because one African American man or African American woman did something, that doesn't mean we all do that. Or just because they believe in something, or they dress that way, or they talk that way, or they act in a inappropriate way in public, that doesn't mean all of us do that. So when I saw that video, I took it upon myself to start a movement to show that us as people in all races, we're more than the narrative and the stereotype that are displayed about us. So that's why I put a campaign out saying that the 5 wells will get you far in life, which is being well read, well dressed, well traveled, well spoken, and well balanced, because that's the game to life right there. If you can do that, you can get in any door that you want to be or go any place that you want to go, and you would possibly be the leader of that company or anything that you're trying to do, because you're ahead and you're living life royally. That's why I will put that into the youth and in my children. That's what I got from the George Floyd incident.
Can I say just one thing? I'm sorry, because I know, but that was just, I don't care if you're black, white, that was overkill. And I just, even if we are trained. We know when to stop, when to escalate, when to de-escalate. That was not how that's supposed to have gone down. Whether you're black, whether you're white, I don't care if he could have been in a well-dressed suit, whatever. Nobody. Once you have the cuffs on, that's it. That's it. He needed medical attention. You render aid. So I just had to say that, because it shouldn't have mattered but you saw it, and we saw it real time. And that's I'll leave it like
Corey,
that.
All right.
Corey,
Yes, sir, Mr. Richardson.
just a moment. If we don't get down to what we believe the primary cause, what caused that officer to do that, we're not going to ever solve the problem. And I think the whole world saw the cause. The man believed that Brother Floyd was worth less than him. He saw him as not being a member of his race based on the color of his skin. We have seen it over and over again. So we can say what has caused that to be. When you can start off in the first grade and go all the way up and get a PhD, and they never mention anything meaningful about a black person, what else for you to think other than they're marginal, they haven't, they just here waiting on some welfare check, they don't work. It's nothing written about us. I mean, so what I think has happened is that the world is saying that maybe these African Americans, maybe they're right. They are right on that they've been selected to be dehumanized. They've been picked on unnecessarily. And until we rectify the real problem, that is this notion that we are in some race. I introduced an ordinance before the city of Mobile. I took race off the table. No more in our documents. We're not using that anymore. We're going to put ethnicity where it was race. We took it, slapped off. Many didn't think the council members were going to join me. They did. We have to deal with the issue of race. There are no two races. We're all members of the same race, and our color, then you can't get expelled from no race because of your skin color. And the officer saw Floyd as not a member of his race.
All right.
Yeah, this is General Cooper.
Yes, sir.
Just wanted to make a couple of comments. One of them is, as long as we continue to have 13, 14, and 15-year-old children becoming mamas and daddies, we're not going to solve this problem. And that's what we've got to work on. I recommended it to the council persons, and I haven't gotten a response. But in Washington, D.C., they've reduced it by 50%. So as long as we have people raising children who don't even know how to raise their own damn self, we're in deep trouble. The one I would just like to share, I enjoy hearing our great our council people and all that good stuff, but I'd like them to take a walk along St. Stephen's Road. and we can see all the great things, and they can say they're so wonderful and busy. But go along St. Stephen Road, and you think our children should have to see this every day, to think this is the way our community should look? And I'd like to suggest our council people to get off their butts and stop flying to Paris and other places and complaining, and let's start making our community something that our children can be proud of. That's all I got to say. John Cooper. Thank you.
All right. Moving forward, we got to keep on moving with the question.
I need to say something.
Although this question may have something to do with it. So if you, we got to keep it moving. We got 20 something questions.
I'm in.
I can get to all of them. But the next question is, we're talking about the fallout from after this video came to light. A lot of anger around the country. It hit just about every major city. The protests, in some cases rioting, in some cases looting, in some cases violence. It even hit this city of Mobile, not the rioting or looting, but the protesting, certainly. So let's talk about that. Were the protests necessary? What were we trying to get from that? I want Mr. Clopton to start off with this, but were the protests necessary? Was the looting and the rioting necessary? Do we understand why this happened? I heard some people on one side say this is absolutely wrong. They shouldn't be rooting, and they shouldn't be looting rather, and they shouldn't be rioting. And then on another side, some people say, you know what, I do understand, because they're angry. And this is the only way to get people's attention. And it almost seemed that it worked, because we got the officers arrested and charged. Mr. Clopton, let's talk about that.
Well, a couple of things. First, when it comes down to a protest, a lot of protests are good trouble. Good trouble for several reasons. But let's look at this. For Congressman John Lewis, he mentioned that the George Floyd moment for him was Emmett Till. As Judge Finley mentioned earlier, in the past, for so many others, it was the Dred Scott decision. For some of the Mobilians, it was the hanging of Michael Donnell. For me, it was the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church, which took the lives of the four young girls. For others, it could have been the March in Selma, the brutality exhibited by the authorities in Birmingham, Alabama, and to some, and many, it was the assassination of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. When this happened, it incited a sense of necessitated change. It's a change which is to come before the actual storm. From this senseless murder, which was only an updated form of modern day lynching, arose first shock. I mean, everyone was shocked when this man died right there in front of the eyes of the entire world. Then there came sadness for Mr. Floyd and his family. Then fear in the eyes of the marginalized, ostracized, criticized, and inadequately mobilized, which led to confusion. And that confusion led to action, and the action led to protests. Now, the protesters were very vocal as they protested peacefully. They demanded persistently for justice and equality. And ultimately, it initiated a fight politically with an agenda. So therefore, was that protest necessary? Are protests necessary? Yes, sometimes they are. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Let's move on, because I believe that it's very important. Excuse me, that alarm is about to go off. And it's very important that we leave the young people. We've got, let's see, about the 23 minutes left. We leave them with something that they can take with them, something that they can implement into their lives at this point. So we're going to move into, for the young Black men and women, what should they do in the case of a traffic stop? What should they do when they encounter a police officer who may be treating them unfairly? What should our young Black men and women do? I want to start with Detective Thornton, then I want to go to Judge Finley, then I want to go to Major General Cooper.
In any traffic stop, you know, the key is before you get in the car, make sure you have a valid driver's license, make sure you have registration, proof of insurance. That's it. If a officer, deputy, state trooper stops you, you know, of course you stop. They come up, the way I was trained, sir, ma'am, the reason I'm pulling you over, do you have your license? Do you have your registrations? If you have all that, then, you know, of course, give it to them. Now, you may not understand why I wasn't speeding. Well, they say, well, I clocked you or whatever, then, you know, but, you know, you give them the information, you know, and just cooperate, you know, with anything. If it escalates anything else, you know, as far as to, you know, can I check your car? The probable cause. Does that particular officer, deputy, state trooper have probable cause to be? They might ask. And I've gone around to all the schools in Mobile County when I was with the Mobile Police Department, and we did mock traffic stops. And so the thing I would say is, you know, can I check your vehicle? 9 times, yeah, I can, you know, yeah, if you know it's nothing in there. But if you don't feel that there's any other reason why, you know, why are you checking my car? Because, you know, if you feel like you're being stereotyped, then at that point, do you have probable cause? Because they have to have probable cause. So if they have, or if they don't have probable cause, then no, I'm not going to allow you to, you know, to check my vehicle. And if it escalates from there, you can always ask for a supervisor. Get the officer, deputy, state trooper's name. You can request for a supervisor to come on the scene. There are many people that go to our internal affairs division where there is supposed to be, or an investigation will be, you know, started, where if there was the improper stop or there was anything else going on that shouldn't have been, then at that time it can be investigated. But there's a procedure. The back and the forth is not the time you want to do, because you have a time in court. At that time, whatever you felt didn't happen, or, you know, as far as a traffic stop was concerned, but if it's a traffic stop, you know, just have what you need. I was pulled over by a state trooper in my city car back in 2011, going home one night, and I had the blue tag. He pulls me over. Well, he stops. I say, hey, I'm Sergeant Jackson. He says, well, I want you to pull over. So I pull over. Now, at this time, I think whenever it was when Ferguson, maybe I have the years wrong. So it's me and him at 11 o'clock at night on a dark road. I have a gun. I'm a female, and I was in plain clothes. I had just finished an undercover assignment. So I get out because I identified who I was. I walked to the back of my car. I had my hands up. I told him, you know, he said, you were speeding. I said, well, okay. Are you going to write me a ticket? He said, I don't like your attitude. I don't like the way you said Sergeant Jackson. I said, okay. So in any event, he didn't write the ticket to me. I called his particular commander who was over him. I say, now, if he is doing this to me, and here it is, I'm law, well, not that he had to, but the fact that if he's doing this to me, it seems like he's going to be doing this, or he's done this to other African Americans in this. I say, if you don't handle this problem now, I say, it's going to bite you on the back burner. And that particular captain who was over this particular area, he handled the situation, because that state trooper, I didn't see him in the area that I live in anymore. But I didn't go back and forth with him. I'm Sergeant, you know, did what he asked me to do. And when I left, I filed a complaint. And that's how that went, because his demeanor, if he was going to write a ticket, or if he felt, you know, okay, whatever, then that, but to tell me, I don't like the way you said Sergeant Jackson, you know, that was a problem for me. So, you know, why didn't I just identify who I was? But in any event, that's the way I handled that situation. So I say, if it's something that needs to be handled, then you know, there you can request for a supervisor to come on the scene. And if that doesn't, then they do have a right to make a formal complaint with the internal affairs section. So but make sure they have what they need when you get in a car, and the people know who you're riding with.
Judge Finley, one thing I also want you to address is, do we have a right to record?
You do, in the short answer. Let me say this though. First of all, if you're not speaking, can you mute your screen? Because the feedback, you don't realize that you're doing things, but when you touch something, you're firing off of it. So if you're not speaking, please mute your screen. Let's talk about this practically, because Sheriff said some really important things. Make sure you've got your license, your registration. your insurance papers. I will say, make sure that they are readily accessible. Put them under the visor so that you don't have to reach for anything. When an officer pulls you over, roll down all the windows in your car. Roll down all of them. That way you're not giving them any reason to be suspicious, because before there's probable cause, there's reasonable suspicion. And officers are looking for that. But also understand that a traffic stop, is dangerous to both sides. So you've got many officers who are as afraid as you are when they're pulling you over. And you don't want an afraid traffic officer, because that heightens the level of intensity. We want to de-escalate at all costs. You have the right to record, but understand that if you do that, it's possible that your phone will be impounded because you've now just made it evidence. So through a subpoena, the law enforcement agency can now subpoena your phone as evidence. If you want to record, there's no law that says that you cannot record an incident or interaction with police officers. Answers, as Sheriff said, yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. Only answer the question that's put to you though. Don't start running off at the mouth about all these kinds of things and ancillary answers. If they ask you a yes or no question, give a yes or no answer. Yes sir, no sir. We start getting into trouble when we start trying to explain ourselves. The quicker that interaction is done and over with, the better it is for all parties involved. The most important thing that the sheriff said, if you've got an issue, if you don't feel like what has been done is fair and just, take it to court, because you're not going to solve anything on the side of the road. And you are at a distinct disadvantage on the side of the road. You get a ticket, take your ticket, sign your ticket, move along. If you don't agree with it, then take it to court. That's most important, because the courts are the grand equalizers. You see, when you go to court, you get a good lawyer, then you'll see that officer get nervous. Mm-hmm. See, most officers are used to being in charge because they're on the side of the road. Mm-hmm. I have the honor of seeing everyone in court where it's an equal playing field. And that officer is now being cross-examined by a highly trained and skilled attorney. I would submit to you that you'll see that things are a little different in the courtroom than they are on the side of the road. So don't try to solve your issues on the side of the road. Answer the questions that are being proposed to you, move along, take your matter to court, and by all means, if you feel like there has been some racial issues or there has been some type of abuse of power, then file a complaint with the Internal Affairs Department.
All right. I want to remind everybody, when you hear that alarm, that means your time is up. Want to ask this to Councilman Richardson and Major General Cooper. There's a question on here that says, do you believe there is such a thing as white privilege? What do we do? What do we as African Americans, Black people, how do we subvert that? How do we get past that in the business world? I was always taught as a child by my parents and those who I looked up to that you just have to be that much better. You have to work that much harder. You have to do that much more to get into, and unfortunately that seems to be the reality growing up and being in the business world. So is there such thing as white privilege? And what should our young people, young Black people do coming up? And you guys came up in a different time than us, so it was probably even harder. But what should we do to get past that?
White privilege is maybe a belief. Some people might have that in their mind, as long as each individual makes sure they are treated with the same dignity and respect as any other individual, then no one would have no privilege over them. It's when you subvert, when you take low and when you allow things to happen that should not be happening, when you allow people to treat you less than the way they're treating everybody else, then that's what they're going to continue to believe. It's like what we just got to discussing about the police. If you don't turn them in, they're going to keep on doing what they're doing. File a report. If you don't file on them, that's why they keep on doing it, because there's no record that they're doing anything wrong. So we got to be who we say we are. We say we are equal to any other human being on the face of the earth. Take nothing less than that. I don't care who it's from, I don't care what situation you find yourself in. That's what you got to do. You watch the city council meetings and watch Fred Richardson to see if you believe that I'm less than any other council member down there. That's what you have to do. Be who you say you are.
Major General Cooper.
This is Gary Cooper. I think we've got to work on teaching our youngsters who are raised in sometimes uncomfortable circumstances in many areas that you must achieve and you must set goals. And we've got to work on rebuilding our families. And I mentioned earlier, as long as we've got 12, 13, 14-year-old children having babies and trying to be parents, we can't expect anything more. And that's just it with me. We've got to work harder. We've got to build ourselves up. And that's it. Hang in there. Thank you.
Well, let me elaborate on it just a little bit. Is there such a thing as white privilege? Yes. White privilege is a societal privilege that benefits white people over non-white people. So the answer is yes. White privilege is the advantages possessed by those white people on the basis of their race in a society characterized by racial inequity and injustice. And white privilege exists. But sometimes it only exists in the minds of the people who don't know that it exists. Now, there is a difference between white privilege and racism. White privilege doesn't require creating rules against someone because those rules are already there. When they wake up, they're there. However, racism is judging others based on their skin or race, their skin color or race. Thank you.
All right. We're coming to a close here. Unfortunately, these questions kind of take up a lot of time, but it's been good so far. I want to talk about moving forward. You know, we are in a very interesting time in our society right now. COVID-19 has changed all of our worlds. We'd probably be doing this in person right now if it wasn't for COVID-19, but we are unfortunately, thankfully, we have technology, but unfortunately, we have to meet this way right now. But we saw, again, what happened with George Floyd. We saw what followed, the protests, the rioting, the looting, the calls for defunding of the police, the calls for more transparency. In fact, here in Mobile, we just got yesterday the use of force policy from the Mobile Police Department that was just made public. And I believe the rest of their policies are going to be made public once tactical information is redacted. So where do we go from here? Sorry, cutting myself off. Where do we go from here though? Now that we have this happen, we have George Floyd's murderers have been arrested. Of course, we still have Breonna Taylor, who we always, everybody's trying to keep that name alive, Breonna Taylor, because we want justice for her. But where do we go from here now that the protests have sort of died down and people aren't as engaged maybe as they were at that time? How do we keep the fight alive, and how do we continue to fight for justice? I want everyone to speak on this. Let's start with Judge Finley.
Yes, by being involved. Form a neighborhood meeting, a neighborhood organization. Assign different board members to attend board meetings. Assign someone to look at city council meeting. Another person looks at county commissions. Another person looks at zoning, housing, water board. We have to start becoming more involved in our government. You see, government isn't some outside entity, it's us. And neighborhoods can create neighborhood organizations. My neighborhood organization, there's somebody at every city council meeting. And that person then reports back at our monthly neighborhood meeting. There's someone attending the water board meeting, the zoning commission meeting. We have to start becoming more involved. If you get enough people in your neighborhood group, then you can take turns, because people say, well, you know, I can't get off at 2 o'clock to go to a zoning commission meeting. That makes sense. But if one person takes a vacation day once a month, and then another person takes a vacation day the next month, then you can start covering all of these things. There's a lot going on in city council. There's a lot going on in county commission. We've got to become more involved ourselves. And as the sheriff said earlier, it's got to be proactive. It's got to be continuous. It's got to be consistent. We have to be involved in these issues constantly. So how do we go forward? Involvement. And for our youth, education, education, education. Once you get knowledge, no one can take it from you. Knowledge is power. You can start helping yourself in your community by being dedicated to learning. Learning, make that teacher earn their paycheck. See, look at it that way. The teacher has what you need. They need to be earning their paycheck and teaching you. And outside of that, everybody's got the phone. That phone, you learn everything else on it. You learn how to do stuff that you should be learning how to do on it. There's an encyclopedia in every one. There's a dictionary in every one of them. Do the research. Utilize this technology to gain good knowledge so that if you have to get in good trouble, you'll be prepared.
Mr. Clopton. Unmute yourself, sir.
I do agree with Judge Finley. We have to be involved. And there's nothing more important than education. Then again, everyone has to understand that they have to stand up for what they believe in. You got to speak truth to the power. If that's a belief you have to stand up. We have to be educated on some of the things that are not being taught in schools. It's where we came from, the trials, tribulations, death, and destruction of lives and families that endured with this journey to get the African Americans to where we are now. We have to listen, we have to learn, we have to respect and follow the teachings of our faith. We got to always remember it's not about me. It's about doing God's work. I want to leave you with three quotes and two scriptures. Mother, can you hear me? Okay, the first quote is change one and you change the world. That was by Mother Teresa. Now don't go out just changing one. Sometimes that one you need to change might be yourself. The second is from Robert F. Kennedy. It says, some men see things that they are and that's why. I vision things that can never be and that's why not. Why not? Why can we not visualize a world of equality, no systemic racism and unparalleled justice? If you can't visualize it, why not? And if you can, what are you doing to make it happen? And Dr. King said, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Never, ever stand silent to things that matter. Two scriptures I leave you with, Matthew 7, 1-3, which humbles me. Judge not, and you will not be judged. So when you read verses, Matthew 7, 1-3, remember, verse number 1 is so pivotal because we have a tendency sometimes to judge, but not judge ourselves. It's well explained in 1-3. And last but not least, Philippians 2-3. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. rather than humility, value others as yourself. And when we do these things, and when we speak truth to the power, in this case, this power will combat racism. Thank you.
Councilman Richardson. Unmute.
Okay, hear me? Okay, I'm most hopeful from what I've heard and seen. I'm hopeful in regards to moving forward into the future. Protest is paying off. It's paying off in Mobile because we had some protests. The police department released their policy manuals stating all of their rules and policies. It would not have happened had we not had protests. Just this week, billionaire Mackenzie Scott, a white woman, gave $20 million to 7 HBCUs. Just this week, Dominion Energy donated $35 million to 11 HBCUs. Just this week, NFL agreed that before any game, all players would take a knee and that they're going to put the name of all of those Black people killed by police on their jerseys before they play, and they're going to sing the Negro National Anthem before every game first, before they sing anything else. We are getting the attention. People don't want this to happen. If you look at my Facebook page, they arrested this white man who braided his hair, colored it black, braided it, painted his face black, put on all black. He's out there knocking out windows, setting fires, and doing everything. They're following protesters. They're following them, doing all of this stuff. So people will say that it's anarchy in the land, that the president needs to act. Look what these people are staging these things because they see that protest is working. It's opening the eyes of the world. It's working. And I would like to close with Acts 17:26. From one blood, God made all nations of men for to dwell on all of the face of the earth. Adam was the one man.
Detective Thornton.
Young people, I want to tell you, it mainly echoes what Judge Finley said, get involved. Years ago, Mr. Clifton McNeil, I worked in the JTPA program. He saw something in me. A young girl from the campground had a bad attitude, worked as a summer cadet with the police department and managed to get herself fired because she had a bad attitude. But he saw something in me. And because he saw something in me, I went back 2 years later and was hired on with the Mobile Police Department and stayed there for 23 years. Through my time, I got involved. You have to educate yourself in order to know where we're going. We have to know where we come from. I told a group of students at South Alabama back in October at the African American Studies class, you got to know who the players are at the table. If you want to make a difference, if you want a voice, you have a voice. You get involved at your schools, go to the administrators. You can start these things. It doesn't take much. You don't need money. You just have to have somebody with a passion. You got to be passionate about what you do, because this journey is not easy. It's not going to be brought to you. You may not be accepted because you're speaking out for what's right, but you got to get involved. You can't be talking. You got to be about action. I don't care how many doors have been closed. I don't care I'm going to make sure that I start my own initiatives. If you want to do something, just do it. Be about it. Learn our government. No, not just the presidential. No, who our city council. No, do you know the 10th judicial court here in Alabama has about 18 African-American female judges and male judges. And I want to say the district attorneys. Even in the 10th in Montgomery County, Montgomery County, they have at least 6 African Americans that represent their judicial court system. That is circuit and district court. No circuit and district, no city court, no district court, no circuit court. In the 13th, which is us, we have no representation, none. That needs to change. We've got to change that. How do we change it? We can't go to school and we go somewhere else. No, there are leaders here. We got to come back. I can't do it by myself. I'm 47 now. I'm getting older now. So you're going to have people to come up. You may not have the time, but you got the resources. There's no such thing as I can't, because we can. I have started something with nothing, and I went out to Fernland. They had nothing out there. In South Mobile County, you talk about rural, you talk about nothing. I got with Pastor Wiley out in Fernland. He said, Miss Jackson, he said, we can anything. We had a food drive for the citizens out in Fernland off Highway 90. A lot of people, you don't go out there for. We did a food drive and a free COVID testing. It just took people work. Three of us, 3 people. Two, they were from Delta City. They said, hey, we want to do something. We started talking. 3 of us got together, donated 300 pounds of food to the citizens. And one resident had been out there her entire life, at least 40 plus years. She said, this is the first time that somebody's ever looked over here at us. But it took 3 people say, hey, we're going to do something, and we did it. So that's all it takes. You got to get involved. You can't be talking. You got to be about action. And no matter how hard it gets, you got to keep going. You got to keep pushing, but we got to educate ourselves, and you got to stay involved. Know your police department. Know who the chief. I asked half of the people, who is the sheriff? They can't even tell me. We got to change that. So I'm going to leave it with that, but involvement and consistency. We got to be consistent. We got to be consistent.
All right, Major General Cooper. Major Cooper, General Cooper, are you there? You may need to unmute. All right. Well, all right, we're going to move on. I think we're going to go ahead and end it there. You know, I don't usually do this. Of course, we try to stay objective with all these things, but since we are talking to young people, I just want to say, I want to note something Detective Thornton said, which I love your last name. It might be related, but one thing she said, you may not have the time, but you do have the resources. And I just want to point out that all these people you see on this screen, excluding me, are powerhouses in this city of Mobile, in this county. These are people of influence. These are notable figures, and these are clearly people who care about you. And these are people you can call on if you need help. Send them an email. I'm sure any one of them would be happy to accept some kind of help, assistance, or if you have an idea and you need some help to carry it out, I'm sure any one of them would be willing to address. I also want to say that you have your church, Friendship Missionary Baptist Church. They cared about you enough to put this on and to have this discussion with you and to tackle these topics. And you have your pastor, you have your youth leader, Minister Evans, and you also have God. So always remember that he's going to be a constant friend for you when you're in this world. I do want to mention these shirts that we have on. They say, oh, you can read it, say, help me breathe. Thank you, Brother Clopton, help me breathe. These are the official shirts. I don't know if you can get one, but there's some pretty dope shirts. And so contact Friendship Missionary Baptist Church if you'd like one. And they also gave us these nice swag bags, which are pretty awesome as well, which there's a face mask in there as well. So that's all we have for you. Thank you all, our panelists. Are you trying to say something, Judge Finley?
I am. The census, fill out the census. We are at 60% in the city of Mobile. We need for you to tell your parents to fill out the census. Don't forget to vote. This is a pivotal election. Register, fill out the census. I can't say it enough. That's how funds are allocated to communities. Make sure that you fill out that census.
All right. Well, that's the word, the census. Remember to fill out the census and remember to vote. Both of those are coming up. Census, you can fill it out online. It takes less than 10 minutes to do online, and definitely want to get out and vote. Make your voice heard. I'm going to give it back to Minister Evans now. Thank you so much for the opportunity. He's going to take it over.
Thank you all so much. This has been a great conversation with a lot of good information, solid information from solid individuals in our community. So want to just thank each and every one of you for your expertise. As many of you know, John Lewis penned a letter to the nation before his death. At this time, to end our live stream, we find it befitting to honor John Lewis by listening to what we will call his last marching orders. And so we will do that at this time.
While my time here has now come to an end, I want you to know that in the last days and hours of my life, you inspired me. You filled me with hope about the next chapter of the great American story, and you used your power motivated simply by human compassion, laid down the burdens of division. Around the country and the world, you set aside race, class, age, language, and nationality to demand respect for human dignity.
That is why I had to visit Black Lives Matter Plaza in Washington. Though I was admitted to the hospital the following day, I just had to see and feel it for myself. That after many silent years of witness, the truth is still marching on.
Emmett Till was my George Floyd. He was my Rayshard Brooks, Sandra Bland, and Breonna Taylor. He was 14 when he was killed, and I was only 15 years old at the time. I will never, ever forget the moment when it became so clear that he could easily have been me. In those days, fear constrained us like an imaginary prison, and troubling thoughts of potential brutality committed for no understandable reason were the bars.
Though I was surrounded by two loving parents, plenty of brothers, sisters, and cousins, their love cannot protect me from the unholy oppression waiting just outside that family circle. Unchecked, unrestrained violence and government-sanctioned terror had the power to turn a simple stroll to the store for some Skittles or an innocent morning jog down a lonesome country road into a nightmare. If we are to survive as one unified nation, we must discover what so readily takes roots in our hearts that could rob Mother Emanuel Church in South Carolina of her brightest and best. Shot unwitting concert goers in Las Vegas and choked to death the hopes and dreams of a gifted violinist like Elijah McClain.
Like so many young people today, I was searching for a way out, or some might say a way in, and then I heard the voice of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on an old radio. He was talking about the philosophy and discipline of nonviolence. He said we are all complicit when we tolerate injustice. He said it is not enough to say it will get better by and by. He said each of us has a moral obligation to stand up, and speak out. When you see something that is not right, you must say something. You must do something. Democracy is not a state, it is an act. And each generation must do its part to help build what we called the beloved community, a nation and world society at peace with itself.
Ordinary people with extraordinary vision can redeem the soul of America by getting in what I call good trouble, necessary trouble. Voting and participating in the democratic process are key. The vote is the most powerful nonviolent change agent you have in a democratic society. You must use it because it is not guaranteed. You can lose it.
You must also study and learn the lessons of history because humanity has been involved in this soul-wrenching, existential struggle for a very long time. People on every continent have stood in your shoes through decades and centuries before you. The truth does not change, and that is why the answers worked out long ago can help you find solutions to the challenges of our time. Continue to build a union between movements stretching across the globe because we must put away our willingness to profit from the exploitation of others.
Though I may not be here with you, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe in. In my life, I've done all I can to demonstrate that the way of peace, the way of love and nonviolence is the more excellent way. Now, it's your turn to let freedom reign.
When historians pick up their pens to write the story of the 21st century,
let them say that it was your generation
who laid down the heavy burdens of hate at last,
and that peace finally triumphed over violence, aggression, and war. So I say to you,
walk with the wind, brothers and sisters,
and let the spirit of peace and the power of everlasting love
be your guide.
Thank you for watching. God bless you. Good night.